Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and on this podcast, we're watching a show, usually week to week, watching something and introducing all of you out there to something that you can watch at home. And in this particular case, we are watching Alien Earth, the third episode, Metamorphosis. On these episodes, going forward, I will be joined by Darren.
G'day there, Victor.
Good day. So a few things to get going, or I should say off the top before we get into the episode proper. Last week in the first, I guess just a couple of days ago when I actually published it, the recap episode for episodes 1 and 2 of Alien Earth, I jokingly mentioned, hey, all of you out there, I'm sure you all have busy podcast production schedules yourselves. And I did ask if anybody had a podcast to send it my way and I would promote it on the podcast. And I got an email from Alan Thomas, and his podcast is Songs of the Year, a podcast that he does no longer puts out. But interestingly, what he does is he picks his favorite 10 songs of a given year and eventually got through all of the years that he was covering there and started covering artists in like their careers through a musical playlist. And this was hosted on Spotify, where you could play the entire tracks in the episodes themselves. And I used to be this podcast itself used to be hosted on Spotify, and I had some of these music episodes. By the way, he wasn't aware of this because those music episodes have disappeared from the feed, mostly usually because I got dinged for copyright now because Spotify doesn't allow those type of episodes anymore. But his episodes made some cut internally, so they are still available out there, and you can listen to them only on Spotify with all those music, all that music included. And once again, the podcast is called Songs of the Year. So if any of you have any podcasts that you do produce or you want to promote, then do send them our way, and we will promote those as well. And by the way, Alan, if you're listening to this, I had an idea a long time ago to have all the hosts of the podcast get together like a round table and have a musical themed episode where we would have it could be like a theme like Halloween, or it could be my favorite musical discovery from a television show this year or from a movie. And then all the hosts would come together and we would play each other our favorite tracks. And then whoever won the rounds, we would like vote and say, oh, that was the best track. I like that one the best. Whoever won would pick the theme for the following episode, and then we'd get together. And I was going to do that on a Patreon feed or maybe a YouTube feed. Anyway, if that day ever comes, with all the spare time that I do not have, but if that day ever comes, Alan, you'll be invited to that roundtable.
That's awesome. That sounds fun.
So yeah, we'll think about that. And so once again, if anybody has any podcasts you want to promote, needssomeintroduction@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you all. Speaking of music, you touched on this, Darren, that song when they're driving and that Lahane wanted to like sync up the music, and there's this like bass, this detuned bass playing and the drums kicking in. And that song, of course, is Jump in the Fire. Of course, I jump into the fire.
Smoke. You're talking about Smoke. Yeah,
in Smoke,
sorry.
yes. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm jumping around here. But in Smoke, yeah, we were talking about this just a few days back. And the song is Jump Into the Fire by Harry Nilsson from Nilsson Schmilsson, his most popular album. And it's very cool. I was listening to it last night because I texted it to you, actually, Darren. And I was hearing the album version. I usually only heard the single version, the 7-minute version with that like whole 3-minute detuned bass playing while the drums are going crazy in the background. And I was like, wow, this is like such a great groove, but a lot of fun. All the way back in 1971. If anyone wants to track that down, Jump Into the Fire, Harry Nilsson.
Yeah, that's awesome. And today we're talking about Alien Earth. There's another kind of mid-episode musical sequence with some more crazy guitar and some just very atmospheric music. And oh my God, it was so effective.
It's an incredible song, by the way. Have you ever heard that? It's 10 minutes long. It's the first track. It's is it Funkadelic or Parliament? I think it's
Funkadelic. Yeah.
I forget which one it is because it's Parliament sometimes, Funkadelic sometimes. I think it might be Funkadelic. It's Maggot Brain. It's the first song off that album, and it is just a 10-minute. It's incredible. It's like one of the most incredible psychedelic guitar riffs ever. It's like it'll put you in a place, and that's like the whole point of that type of music. But it's really beautiful, and yeah, that's just a little snippet of that long track. But yeah, another great music break.
I'm a bit embarrassed that I haven't heard that before, but looking it up, Maggot Brain is very apt for the Alien TV show.
Very apt, yes. The title alone, for sure. And that's a great album. And if you haven't heard that album before, Darren, the second track on the album is much more upbeat, not this kind of moody psychedelic track. And you will notice that it has been sampled in many, many other songs. So
Great. That's what I'm listening to today, that album.
yeah, there you go. It's a great album in general. Oh, one more thing I want to mention. Misha on Spotify, one of the comments on the recent episode, just wanted to shout out. She was complimenting the podcast, but primarily she wanted to shout out the fact that she was just finishing up Smoke and watching Dexter Resurrection at the same time. And she was like, it's so hard for me to believe. And I don't think we've driven this point home enough times that the same actor who plays Blessing also played Freddy on Smoke. And yes, what a range for this actor to be playing those two roles, in tandem. Pretty amazing performance. A couple of things I want to mention to you directly, Darren, is first of all, the reaction to the Smoke season finale, the popular reaction was pretty disdainful. Even people who were on board said they were giving this thing like 1 and 2 stars on their reviews on IMDb and some of the other places I track. And they were really furious about how ridiculous the whole Michelle being catapulted out of the car and like landing on her feet thing was. And once again, I think that if you're reading this show a little too literally, that might play more hard for you to accept.
That's funny to hear. Yeah, I just went with it. And I just thought it was just so well done and so cool that, yeah, it didn't bother me that much. But it's a shame when you go through a whole series and then you're disappointed by the finale. That's, yeah, it's a bit of a bummer for people, isn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty rough. When you look at the ratings, you see them like really go off a cliff on the finale. So I think a lot of people maybe didn't get what they expected there at the end. I mean, I don't think that they really nailed the landing, but I don't think it was necessarily out of tone with the rest of the series. And the last thing I want to bring up to you is the reaction to this show, Alien Earth, Darren. I'm really surprised by this. When the show first came out, the audience reviews were really off the charts. People had seen it at Comic-Con, the first 2 episodes. People had seen a theatrical preview of one of the episodes, 1 or 2 of them. I think they had them available for free for fans in theaters. So the early reaction was off the charts. Of course, all the diehards. But now, every time they put out another episode, this audience reaction on social media, I mean, I think the majority still are on board with the show, but they're saying like, it's so boring. It's so slow. And I'm going to spoil my reaction here to this episode. I didn't think this was a slow moving episode at all. I thought there was so many interesting things that happened in this episode. And I'm always just kind of really surprised when the opposite happens too, where people will say like the last season of Silo, for example, which I think moves at a snail's pace. They're like, it was so well paced. I was in the edge of my seat the whole time. Like, what are you talking about? They like walked around for 5 episodes, and so it's not that they're wrong and I'm right. It's just, I really am fascinated when I hear these criticisms of things and just have a completely different perspective on it. Do you get where this is coming from, or do you know anybody else who's watching this and their reactions?
I really liked this episode. I've liked all the episodes. I gave a bit of a rave in your first podcast about it, and I have a greater appreciation for you being able to talk to yourself, stream of conscious type, for a whole episode, because I tried to do it for 10 minutes and it was very difficult.
But you have to take a lot of notes and practice, a lot of practice too.
A lot of practice for sure. I've seen some negative sentiment about the first couple of episodes, but yeah, I did see that thing that people think it's slow. I don't think it's slow at all. I mean, this is a series of television, so it's not going to be all action all the time.
Right.
I thought that second episode was there was plenty of action, as there was plenty of action in this episode.
Yeah.
But the themes of what the show is about is really about these children's brains in these humanoid bodies. So you need to take some time to get those themes to come across and to understand how these kids are feeling. Otherwise, you can't just have all action all the time.
And to develop them too. Show. I mean, yeah, I just find it very strange. And when I say that, I mean, there is the popular sentiment that the show is slow, like literally seeing reaction last night that another episode where nothing happened, and I'm like, I don't understand what show you guys are watching. But I've heard critics say this too, like that, like, I don't know if I can finish the show. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, if you're a fan of Alien, this is not the strangest it's been. This is not the slowest that we've ever seen of like Alien Resurrection or something, for, just to name one thing that is, very ponderous, to be honest, or Alien 3, even more so. So, I mean, it's not like this franchise hasn't been strange before. And like you mentioned, this is a TV show. It's not just like action like, do you want to watch Aliens, which I love? I love Aliens, but do I just want to see 7 hours of people shooting aliens? I don't want to see that.
Yeah, that is confusing to me. I mean, I'm loving the show and I'm liking to where it's going as well. I mean, and if you're an Alien fan, as you say, there's so much to grab hold of. All these new creatures and actually all this action that is happening with the alien. If you see it all the time, it's not scary. But these fights that happen off screen and you use your imagination, I'm all about it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll break it down in just a moment. A couple of things I want to bring up. Of course, we're still covering Dexter Resurrection, three more episodes of that, and I'm going to keep the third episode, the solo episode, I think, or it might be solo temporarily, on this week as well, coming up, just to see how long people, if they're interested in it at all. In this particular episode, I think I'm going to do like a summer movie box office breakdown, considering we're at the end here, and just kind of give a scorecard of films that succeeded or didn't succeed, and also my general opinion of most of them, since I've seen most of them, and then kind of what it says. Like Marvel, for example, put out two good movies this summer, and they both didn't do very well at the box office. So question mark there. So anyway, some kind of trends we might be seeing in some of the box office results as well. So that'll be on Monday, and then of course we, in this time slot on a Wednesday night or Thursday morning, depending on when you're hearing this, we'll have our coverage of Alien Earth until it completes in 6 more weeks. Okay, so let's get into the episode. First of all, it's called Metamorphosis. So I'm not sure we saw. I mean, I think the show is metamorphosing maybe more than anything else, but of course, this creature changes shapes as well. A couple interesting things right off the top that I forgot to mention. One is that I love that you pointed this out, Darren, that letters appear on the screen like we've seen in the previous Alien films, but in the background, as the letters are appearing, we see like not an official like previously on Alien Earth, but we just see these scenes that remind us of what happened last episode.
Yeah, just
Right?
enough to
Just
catapult you into this week's
exactly.
episode.
Is very cool. Yeah, I wanted to call that out. But that is a very cool technique to give us a previously on, but it's very stylish. And like you say, it's almost like you're just slipping back into this universe again. The second thing I forgot to bring up is the theme song here is this very distorted version of Strange Brew. It just says Strange Brew killed what's inside of you. That's it. That's the opening.
Okay, yeah. What's Strange Brew again?
Strange Brew from Cream. This is another oldies song. Strange Brew. I don't know if it's a very distorted version of the original Cream song or if it's just somebody, playing some distorted version of it here. But that apparently is the theme song to Alien Earth. Yeah, and the last thing I want to mention is, and you touched on this in your commentary as well, not only in seeing Kirsch becoming more and more like maybe the Rutger Hauer character in Blade Runner, just this whole entire episode had huge Blade Runner vibes. So I was thinking, well, maybe they're bringing in a little bit like without, they can't officially use Blade Runner, but of course, Ridley Scott directed both those films. So you can kind of wink in that direction. There's some design work that is reminiscent between Alien, and people have had a lot of fan fiction about those two are in a shared universe, Alien and Blade Runner. It's almost like unofficially they are in the same shared universe here because like you see these giant skyscrapers and just some of the design work here, and even the way that the androids are designed in some of these ponderous conversations between them, these artificial life forms. It's very Blade Runner-ish.
Yeah, it really is. I did see a bit of commentary online that the Asian man in the hallway who's like cleaning
Yes.
the door or sealing a door, he's a character out of Blade Runner.
There is imagery here, that image specifically, that reminds me of Blade Runner, also reminds me of David Lynch's Dune, but mostly it reminds me of an identical scene in one of the last episodes of Legion. So
Okay.
he is recycling some of his own imagery, and also these all these people living in this like dorm, basically in this circular quarters, is right out of Legion. By the way, the third season of Legion. So I mean, as a lot of filmmakers do, they're repeating some of the same visual motifs. But yeah, there's definitely elements there, stylistic elements to other shows for sure, and other properties. I like that I complained that we weren't going to see Timothy Oliphant really giving a lot of personality in his performance here, but his Kirsch's personality has emerged, and it's pretty bitchy.
There's a
And
couple of characters that have come out that are a couple of my faves, and he is one of them.
yes,
Yeah, how cool! He's cool as a cucumber in this, and he's almost showing this boy Cavalier who is the real boss.
yeah, I like how Cavalier keeps pushing him around, and of course he has that amount of respect. He might even be programmed to be that way for all we know. But it is funny when you think about it that he really multiple times is butting heads directly with Cavalier, maybe the character who is most willing to be confrontational with Cavalier, although there's a couple of them in this episode alone. But I do think it's funny because Cavalier probably programmed him that way, right, as a way to challenge him, but maybe he got a little bit more than he bargained for. So in this lab, Kirsch has gotten the download literally from of the specimens and what they're about, and we see that three of the younger hybrids are with him. And I really like this very efficient way that they kind of do character development and introduce us to each one of these characters. Nibs is very interesting. This character, she is having a serious disassociation with her body, which is interesting because you think about that. Like, there are people who were blind and then suddenly can see later in life, and then they can't reconcile that the person in the mirror is the person because they had some other vision of their self. And you think about how that creates some kind of disassociation. Could you imagine suddenly being in a completely different body? If anything, it's strange that people have adapted to it so much. And she is having a full on crisis. They're obviously setting up something big that's going to happen later on with this particular character. But she keeps having that flashback to the eyeball tentacle creature trying to go into her head. And what do you think that all represents? Because, I mean, she obviously is no longer organic. So maybe the eyeball thing wouldn't have worked on her, but she's traumatized by this for sure.
Yeah, she's struggling, isn't she? And I really like the actress they've cast is not like all the others are
Yeah.
quite classically stunning. I mean, this girl is stunning as well, but she's also very unusual. And it
Yeah.
really works when she's looking at herself in the mirror and seeing kind of these unusual features. It's almost like the brain is not, it's not fully kind of blended with the body. And the fact that she sees an eyeball bouncing around, maybe she can think that some of her body parts can kind of bounce around or live outside of where she's been forced into.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't think of that. But I mean, yeah, speaking of how she's dissociated from her body, she at one point, much later in the episode, is like poking her eyeball directly. It's like
Oh,
she's
oh.
not even aware that it is yeah, I have an eye thing too. I don't really want to watch that. But it's like she's, it's not even like her own body that she's touching, which of course in a way it's not. And that goes back to that whole idea of like the whole mind body, right? Like if you are simply the mind is really separate from the body, then it's just this machine that you're walking around inside of. And if you're not familiar with it, if you're not connected to it, if it purely is just this other machine, then she's dealing with this right now. She has like a true disassociation, basically.
Yeah, that was one of the ickiest bits in the whole episode, wasn't it? When
Just
she
touching her eyeball.
actually touched it. Can you imagine doing that? No.
No, I can't. And then, of course, all the questions we literally asked last week, like why are they all named after Peter Pan characters? Why is it Lost Boys? We're not even all boys. So it's all these interesting. Why are we in adult bodies? And of course, Curly, the other character here, who seems to be much more mature than the other ones, by for some reason. She is actually does a really good job of calming Nibs down and seeming like very mature and giving good answers. But later on, we see that she is very childishly like trying to be the favorite child, right? So it's interesting. I found her character really fascinating this episode.
Yeah, I liked how they're challenging this whole Lost Boys Peter Pan thing because it was a little bit cheesy, and the fact that they're bringing it up and calling it out, I think, is fun. Um, yeah, she's a good actress. I think she's from New Zealand. This what girl that plays
Sounds like it.
Curly. I
Yeah.
can detect that accent, and she's trying to be like a teacher's pet, isn't she? To try
Yeah.
to yeah, to try to get Cavalier's attention and try to get more responsibility, which could work out quite bad for her, I think.
And then we see some social commentary here where Cavalier is talking to Kirsch, and he wants those bioweapons. He says we have trillions of dollars of R&D have just landed in our backyard, and the idea that everyone says this is a bad idea. You have a 10-year project right now with these hybrids. We're just going live with them. You're about to launch this product, and now you're getting distracted with this. But it's like corporate greed always wins. And we know, by the way, in these alien movies, corporate greed always leads to horrible, horrible disasters.
It always does. And there's always a character that puts these alien lives above everybody else's.
Yep. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. And I love this interaction, by the way, between Cavalier and Kirsch. This is where we start seeing Kirsch pushing back a little bit. Fascinating, by the way. There's so many great things. I don't understand why these people get bored with this episode because there's so many really fascinating character details here. But all the interactions between Kirsch and Cavalier, or even when Kirsch is by himself later, we'll get to it. But this whole thing, first of all, Cavalier saying to Kirsch, "How are my kids?" So this really interesting, like proprietary, taking control of his kids, even though they're putting them in danger and expecting, Kirsch to watch them basically. And then later on, by the way, Murrow goes, "Are you the parent?" to Kirsch. So then Kirsch is like saying, like, who is the parent here, right? Like Kirsch is the one who's responsible for watching them. But Cavalier tells us, my kids, because what, he made them, but he's not really showing that much. He's not really guiding them properly, I would say. And I think this is a huge theme in this episode is parenting. It's like the different ways of parenting, or by the way, all bad parents across the board in this episode.
That's interesting. And there's in a previous episode, the Essie Davis character and her other her partner, they were talking that they're their kids
Right.
as well because they are unable to have children. So I mean, maybe there's a bit of a power grab for these what are they called? Hybrids. They're called. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if they're officially called hybrids, but I think we've been calling them hybrids. You might have said that first, but I'll go with it. Kirsch is proud of them, by the way. He says they did well. And then he goes, Wendy's off on her own, but nope, she's with Slightly. And then I found it very funny that Cavalier gets angry at him and says, you can just send her with Slightly. He's a child, which is just so weird because it's like, she's a child. What are you talking about? They were born like within months of each other. Like it just makes no sense at all. But I love the dialogue here where Kirsch tries to point out the obvious, saying, with all due respect, it's a crash site and we are trying to contain an alien invasion. And Cavalier responds, I thought you were supposed to be better than a man, but all I hear is excuses. I thought the dialogue across the board in this episode is very strong.
Great exchange.
Meanwhile, Wendy's out there looking for Hermit. He's being used as prey. It's obvious. Interesting that they're in this container full of meat. I guess it's all meat. That's what I was thinking, right? Like their meat to this alien. But then the alien pops in. Alien looks great, by the way. This practical alien looks fantastic. I love it, right? But the alien pops his head in, and then it's like for some reason, there's something going on between him and Wendy. She can hear something. Yeah, we haven't discussed that, obviously, but I'm very curious to see where this is going. And then he tries to do like a stealthy, not that stealthy. And then she finds out by stabbing it that it has this acid for blood. And then when it's about to finally get the drop, I don't know where she goes, by the way. She disappears for a while there, but then her brother's almost killed. And then she gets that hook through that little mouth thing. She drags it by the mouth. He's like, what are you doing? She's like, I don't know. They try to get her into the elevator. It bites through that little, retractable mouth that it has. Pretty gross. And then, she gets slammed. She gets caught in there with the alien. but she gets the upper hand. What did you think about this whole action sequence?
Oh, I thought it was fantastic. I'm a bit confused why the alien used Hermit as bait.
Right.
That's to get her to fall. That's a bit beyond me. Maybe
Yeah.
it has does have something to do with her sensitivity to the alien's vibrations somehow. But yeah, very cool in this container. And then, I mean, the fight that happens off screen
Again.
and
Yeah.
it's so good. It's so cool. And when Hermit finally gets the door open and you see the alien is sliced in half and
Yeah.
you just see Wendy just shaking. I just love where my imagination goes about what happened in there. I mean, that's scarier than anything that you could actually see. So yeah, I thought that was awesome.
I love it so far. I do hope they don't just do that every time that there's an alien attack. That's always off
They're
screen
doing
because
it often, aren't they?
it's pretty much been every attack so far has been off screen. So I'm curious to see if that's going to continue or if they're waiting. I mean, that's the other possibility that now, after we hear maggot brain for a little while, we've surprisingly pivot to a completely different location. It's almost like the show. This was all just setting the table setting, and now we are, resetting things to a large extent with the season of TV at this new locale. But now it could be like more like a traditional alien, stalk and kill type film or story. Yes, so it could be that they didn't want to show too much of that early on because then it would become repetitive if it just happens again towards the end of the season. But very effective so far for sure. She uses the
What
slicer
was it?
from the paper cutter. That was she probably watched a lot of anime when she was growing up. That was her takata. What do you call it? The takana?
Katana, and the
Katana,
way that it
katana.
is,
Yeah. Yeah.
it just magnetizes to her back is pretty cool too.
Yeah. Oh, and of course, during this attack, the alien punctured the brother's lung, but he survives. She survives as well. We see the white blood coming off of her head, so she, got some pretty serious damage by this alien. But the telltale sign that she's bleeding, her android blood. Oh, before we leave this location, of course, I almost went right to the exiting, with their bodies on the gurney. But of course, we got to talk about this other absolutely incredible scene that
Yes.
begins with Slightly and Smee running into each other. And these two actors have great chemistry playing these two kids. It's so funny. They're like jumping up and down, like going like, oh my God, they were so gross. There was these kill. It was like we got a whole rundown of the first three episodes through these two guys. And I like how he's so excited to hear what the other guy is saying. He's like, oh, and where's Wendy? Oh my God, we got attacked by a 12-foot tall monster. I forgot to tell you. Uh, this whole thing was hysterically funny. And by the way, another thing people were complaining about, that the comedy, I'm like, it's okay to have comedy in these things. Calm down, people. I love when they mention, can you believe we're on a spaceship? And then the other guy goes underground. Kind of a dumb place for a spaceship. But all of this was really funny.
What I also think is funny and interesting is because they're children's brains in these
Yes.
grown-up bodies, so they've got extra strength. They probably feel a little bit like superheroes.
Yeah.
So even though they're scared, they're very confident because they've got this physicality. Yeah, it's great.
And this is when Morrow shows up. And when I saw him in that whole flash forward, once again, all of the first Alien movie, but off screen in the first episode. The when I saw him there, I'm like, I didn't know if he was going to become a really big part of this show in general. But this actor, his name is Babu Sise. Like, wow, this guy is. I mean, I haven't seen it. I looked him up, but his IMDb, I haven't seen him in anything big. Maybe just bit roles here and there. But this guy is really intense, and there's so much going on in his head, and you don't know what he's thinking all the time. It's very hard to get a read on this guy. But all these interactions he has are incredible. And he's downloading the entire computer into his mind at one point so he can delete it. just like Calderon's brother, by the way. You copy it all and then you delete it.
Yeah.
Uh, and this is still funny, by the way. The guys, these kids are basically saying, "Are you a robot?" And he says, "It would be better if he was." Basically, he says that if he could be all machine, but he's just the worst parts of man, all the worst parts.
Oh, look, that was devastating, wasn't it? Because, I mean, I agree. This character is incredible. This guy and Kirsch, they
Yeah.
were highlights of this episode for me. And when we first saw Morrow in the very first episode, he behaved like a robot,
Right.
right? So he didn't seem like he was scared of the alien. He got into that little secret kind of crash shoot just in time. So we thought that he was doing everything like a robot. But as we can see, he's extremely conflicted. He's a
Yeah.
cyborg. So he was originally a human and now he's been enhanced. Just the image of him putting those things on his temples and the LED lights going
Yeah.
through to indicate that him downloading all that information. Such a great image, practical lighting, which is not very high tech, but
Right.
just looks so fantastic. Yeah, he's okay. So he can make his hand into a hook, right? So he's the Captain Hook of this Peter Pan
Oh,
story. Is that
right.
right?
Yeah. Great call. Yes. Yes. And yeah, I mean, of course, Captain Hook, the ship, they actually have an excerpt the, from Peter Pan in episode 2 that a darkness came upon the land all of a sudden, which of course I mentioned there was like, it's adulthood coming, right? But it actually is the Captain Hook coming on the ship is, what's happening in this story. And of course, we have a giant ship that crashed into Neverland, right? So it's not
Yep.
and who was piloting that ship? Captain Hook, and he's got giant lobsters with him too.
Well, they're the crocodile.
There you go, the crocodile, exactly right. Where's the clock? We need a ticking clock.
Yes.
So yes, all of these interactions are incredible. When he starts to understand, do you think you have parents? All of just all of this, and like you said, he's so conflicted. He's like, "What would you do?" And these guys are hysterical. Like they're still so funny. They're like, "Well, are they good people? Are they bad people?" And it's like two tones butting up against each other, but but intentionally so. The innocence of these kids against this guy who's so hardened and has seen the worst of everything. And he's like, I've killed my friends. And I like when they ask the question, like, are they good people? Are they bad people? And he goes, does it matter? And they're like, yes, it does. What if they were trying to kill somebody like my parents? And they're like, parents? Do you not know you don't have parents? And of course, this is when, but I mean, he's already sussed this out, of course. One is a machine, not a machine. He grabs slightly by the neck. Of course, this is all a ruse. He's not actually trying to hurt him. He's actually just trying to implant that thing on his neck so that he can communicate with him later. But this is when Kirsch shows up. And once again, man, these, like you said, these two characters so incredible in this episode. And when they're talking to each other, even better, even better.
And just when Kirsch enters the scene and the two kids just slide behind him, I mean, it's just a great visual.
Oh my God. The fact that they are like looking like for the very moment where he is fully in the room so they can hop behind him. And they both have the exact same thought. They like immediately, like, it's like coordinated. It's fantastic. What incredible detail. It's so funny. But Kirsch has an answer for everything. I love this interaction where he goes, "You're on my ship." And he goes, "Not a ship." I like how he gets right into legalese. He goes, "It's not a location. This is a thing." And he goes, "And this is a ball. It's a ball that landed in my backyard."
Yeah.
I also like the innocence of when he says that he doesn't have any friends anymore. And slightly is like, everybody needs friends, which of course he uses against them later on. And then Murrow jumps. It's also because Kirsch has figured out more or less pretty quickly how these aliens work. And he's just like, well, you're about to get inseminated one of those things if you don't do something. But Murrow decides to jump. And somehow this is all very yada yada. He somehow can get off the ship. I mean, I guess he knows the ship. So I guess there's some ways he probably knows how to get off, but it is kind of convenient that he was able to get out of there without any detection, where they had basically a full military on top of him.
Yeah, he's been around Morrow. He knew to be this cyborg on this mission to get these aliens. He's had a full history with this Wayland Yutani Corporation, and he knows the ins and outs of these situations.
And then this is a big surprise for me at this moment. This is when they leave this site. And I'm shocked that we're
Mm.
3 episodes in and they left the ship. I was like worried, like, are we going to do everything on the ship? Is that all it's going to be? Tracking these aliens and maybe more aliens and maybe some other creatures. So I got kind of concerned. And then I'm like, no, here we are in the middle of episode 3, and we've already left the ship. And
Yeah, I
Wendy,
was
of course,
surprised as
recovering.
well, but it was this maggot brain
Yes.
musical interlude that really led us from the
Yes.
ship back to Neverland.
And what a beautiful, like, yeah, I mean, I thought it was incredible. Like, I thought the same thing as you did. It's like so memorable hearing it, but it is this great way of just creating this segue from one location to another. And it's a long scene where the music's playing and you see everybody, you see everybody recovering and, getting settled in at Neverland. And they all did do this to the Maggot Brain song. Yeah, terrific filmmaking.
And just the reactions of the Cavalier as he's seeing each alien come through, and then he finally sees the body of the main alien. Wow.
Yeah, fantastic. So Wendy's recovering and they're worried about her. Sylvia feels guilty again. She says they're children. Goes back to that idea that everybody sees these surrogate or should see these creatures as surrogate children. I guess they're not creatures. I should say they're androids or I mean, they're all some kind of alternate life, and everybody's like basically superimposing on it some kind of paternalistic or maternalistic instinct. And I wonder if Kirsch feels jealous about that. I'm very curious about how Kirsch in another scene, but I'll save it for a moment later. This other scientist, I don't know is the character's name, but he talks back to Cavalier again. A lot of people mouthing off the Cavalier in this particular episode. I don't know if he likes hiring these type of people or not, but he definitely needs this person. This guy's probably the best at what he does. So I'm not sure anybody else can reboot Wendy properly other than this guy. So he probably can't fire him, but he's not too happy about him mouthing off to him. What did you think about S.E. Davis looking at him after he basically says, look, I got work to do, like get out of here? And she just kind of looks at him afterwards. I mean, I think she looks admiringly at him for being able to stand up to Cavalier. Is that how you read that?
Yeah, well, they're the couple, aren't they? So, I mean, they need to keep Cavalier to keep doing their work, and I think they feel extremely protective of Wendy and the Lost Boys. So they don't want to lose her so soon.
Then we see Slightly and Smee get interviewed by this security officer there at Neverland. I found it really interesting, by the way, that Slightly is drawing this picture of the creature, and he draws himself as a little child, right? So once again, going to the idea that he's in an adult body, but he hasn't really, that's not your self perception, of course. In his own mind, he's still that little kid, and the creature was 12 feet tall, which it probably wasn't, but in his mind it was.
That's so interesting how all these adults are interacting with these essentially children, even though they're in adult bodies. It's a very strange thing, and I think it's a little bit creepy the way Morrow and Cavalier interact with these kids sometimes to try to just mold their minds into doing what they want them to do. And the fact that they're children makes it quite easy to guide them. Yeah, I find it a bit creepy.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down that the interactions with Morrow when he starts communicating with Slightly later, I wrote down grooming because that's what he's basically doing. He's like,
Yes. Yes.
manipulating the kid and saying like, "Oh, you'll be my friend, right?" And it really feels exactly like that. So again, it's this idea that you're taking, a paternalistic figure, and I think he has a sense of having lost a child there too. So there's an element of that, but he's using it to this like nefarious, potentially very nefarious end. Curly eventually goes and visits Cavalier as well, someone else who's got a lot of opinions to represent to mention to him, and she's basically says, "I want to be your favorite." I like that he's like, "Well, Wendy's my favorite, mostly because she was the first one." I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what he says. Wendy Curly says that my dad always threw away the first pancake.
Yeah.
Cavalier says, "How does it feel to have no more body, no more blood, no more heart?" She says, "No more pooping." Of course, she's a kid. And she says, that's okay, as long as she gets to live forever. She also says she has a lot of ideas. Wendy doesn't have ideas. She's just worried about her brother, but she has a lot of ideas. She thinks about how the world works and how she can make it better. And I like that Cavalier says, tell me. And she says, no way, you'll steal my ideas. And he says, true.
Yeah.
Of course, of course. And then he mentions the fact that, yes, you have a child's mind, which is part of being a child prodigy, that children have more imagination. They have more elastic brains, which is true. I don't know if he's just saying that, but that is true. That, and I like that at the end where she goes, "Does that mean I'm?" And that's where she plays her hand, like she's playing it kind of cool, but then she has this little grin on her face, and she's like, "Am I your favorite now?" And that little kid is poking through out of this mature facade, and he goes, "Nope, but you're in the race. You're now in the race to be the best, my favorite." And that's
I
all she
do like
wants.
that because you can see, I mean, Cavalier is not always going to be a boy, we think. We're assuming
Right.
he's human, so he's going to grow up and his mind is going to get a little bit more on the one track. So he needs these kids to help him stay young. Yeah, of course.
And they're lost boys, right? The kids never grow up. That's the whole idea, as they mentioned earlier. So, is this whole technology a way of keeping them in arrested development? But of course, they'll have to grow up in some way. I mean, in some ways, they will grow up regardless of their technology. They are experiences, whether you as well, not just it's not just your body. Oh, a couple of things I wanted to bring up when the Smee and Slightly are being questioned after the security guard leaves. I wanted to touch on this because I think it's a really interesting scene. A lot of the most interesting scenes in the episode, no one actually talks. And Kirsch is watching them in the room, and he's watching them, and then they're cutting back and forth. And then at one point, Smee comes around and puts his arm around Slightly and comforts him. And how did you read that? Because I don't know. Like, what did you take away from that? And what do you think Curly's think? I mean, what do you think Kirsch is thinking as he's watching them?
That's a good question. I just think it's tragic where they realize that the company can see everything through their eyes. So they
Right.
will
Mm-hmm.
never get a moment of privacy or a moment to themselves. And they're just kind of realizing they are just tools or weapons for this company. But yeah, Kirsch, I don't know is my answer. I don't know what he's thinking. And I think that's going to be very important in this series is what Kirsch what his aims are going to be because I don't think his aims line up with Cavalier's aims.
What's funny, and this is what's so interesting for me about the show is when I watched it last night, I thought it was ominous. Why is he watching them? And then he sees them comfort each other, and then he looks away. It's like he's ashamed, although he doesn't have emotions. And I was like, is he thinking like, oh, in the first episode he said, "Don't call them human," and I, inferred that he was looking at them like, no, they're androids like me because that's what he is. So he wants to see them in his own image, basically. So I read it that way, like, oh, he's like acknowledging the fact that they're human, more human more human than human, right? If you go back to Blade Runner, but I'm like more human than he wanted to accept. But then I rewatched it today to take notes, and when I rewatched the episode, I thought, is he seeing them as his kids? Because I thought about the moment earlier on where Cavalier says they're my children or my kids, and then later on, Amuro says, "Are you the father?" And he's taken aback by that for a moment because he didn't realize that the kids had been having that conversation, before he arrived. And then is he thinking that he has some kind of responsibility to raise them to some extent? And he saw that comforting, maybe something that he isn't capable of doing or wouldn't think of doing.
Mm.
And he sees himself as like, like lacking in some way. So, and the fact that I don't know which one of those things, I think that's like a plus because it makes me think, right? So,
That's cool. Yeah. So they're showing kind of, yeah, comfort with each other that makes them feel better, whereas he is just a pure android and there's no need for him to do that at all. And maybe he feels lacking. Yeah.
meanwhile, Muro has called Yutani, and a pretty fascinating conversation. Also, she's like, come in, we need your information you downloaded. And he's like, no, I want to get these creatures back. She says, no, you've done enough. And he says he doesn't have anybody. He doesn't want to come in. He doesn't have anybody left. Everybody I know is dead. She at first thinks that's an insult. She goes, well, hey, you're going to be cryogenically frozen for decades. You're probably going to lose your whole family along the way. And he says, no, I'm not complaining. I know what I signed up for. But he is on this single-minded mission that he says that I'm going to get them back. These creatures are my life's work. So it's really interesting, again, that this guy has nothing else to live for. So he's like villainous by default because he really has nothing else.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And he's was put on this job by Utani's grandmother or something
Right,
like
right.
that. Yes. So whether he still feels a little bit of loyalty to Utani, we're not sure. But yeah, I mean, he is part machine, right? So he's single-minded.
Yeah, that side, his human side. I'm curious to see how that will express itself later on.
Yes.
He ends up at a sex club, and he's able to. I guess I'm inferring here. I'm
I
inferring here
forgot
that
about the sex club.
with like
He's
spider
just
webs and stuff like
randomly
that.
there.
Very cheesy
Yeah.
sex club, but the he ends up connected to a Prodigy computer, and I guess through the computer, like any Prodigy computer, he can have some kind of access to this chip that's inside of Slightly's neck. And they have a really, like, that's the whole grooming conversation, this really fascinating conversation where this kid immediately is terrified of hearing this voice and then yet wants to continue the conversation. And then he says, yeah, you're right, everybody needs a friend, will you be my friend? He uses the story about his daughter. She used to hate raisins. Just like one detail to kind of remember, and you see that smirk on his face, like he really seems for a moment there to be remembering his daughter, and yet he's doing this terrible thing and like in grooming this poor kid. It doesn't. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of covert operation to get to locate them and get in there, but it starts here at this moment. But it is a really great, another terrific scene with Murrow again. Pretty much everything that he's in, all these scenes are pretty great.
Yeah, he's captivating, and I guess if you're in a sex club, that's as good a place to be anonymous. But the fact that he is grooming this guy, I mean, adds another layer of just pretty disgust to the whole thing. But yeah, he's killing it. This guy, this Babu Cisse, he is absolutely destroying the series. Him and Timothy Olyphant. So yeah, really looking forward to where they go with those characters.
Yeah, exciting. I like when he says at the end when he signs off, he goes, "Don't let the bed
Yeah.
bugs bite." And I'm like, yeah, don't let those bugs bite for sure.
And I think that's a callback, right? They've said that in another Alien movie along the way.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely like little callbacks like that. Like if probably name them all, they'd probably be nothing but Easter eggs. Yeah, and then what do you think is happening in that moment? We already jumped all the way ahead to it, but Nibs in the hallway after touching her eyeball, she's seeing herself. She's seen her body like laid out at one point, the child body. She's looking at her mirror. There's this kind of weird hallucinatory effect going on. She sees this weird figure in the hallway who may actually be there. But yeah, did you get anything else from these final moments with her as she walks through the hallway?
To be honest, I just let it wash over me because it was also Wendy kind of got up
Yeah,
when she was next to Essie Davis,
Sylvia. Yeah.
who possibly is her mother or another mother figure. And it was all very hallucinatory, whether she did actually walk into that lab and pass out behind them, even though no one really
No one
noticed.
noticed she was there.
Uh,
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
yeah, yeah, whether that happened or not, or whether she's kind of viewing it through the screens, which she can always do. I really want to know what this guy in the hallway is doing. I mean, it looks like he's sealing up the doors. Maybe they are other hybrids that didn't quite work, or yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I feel like I'm going to let this show give me those hallucinatory images and trust that they're going to give me answers down the track.
Yeah, I mean, and I have a lot more confidence here than I did with Legion, where it was nothing but hallucinatory images that didn't rarely tied into anything else. But this is already much more concrete than that is. We see this really cool thing here at the end where Kirsch is doing surgery on the egg. I did forget to mention earlier on where Cavalier wants to get into the lab, and this egg has not reacted when Kirsch is around, right? Going back to this idea of Kirsch not seeing himself as human, and this alien knowing that it's not human. And then, of course, the second that Cavalier gets close, the egg starts opening up, and he immediately figures out, oh, I know how this thing works. But I find that sequence fun, and of course, he very safely. I love how he did all this. He's like, I'm gonna like go in through the side. I'm gonna cut this thing open, and if it does anything, if it tries to escape, just suck it up into into the vacuum. And yeah, they get this, like, speaking of deconstructing like the series, that Alien series, like, think about how deconstructed this is. He opens the egg from the side, he takes the face hugger out, they electrocute it, he takes this tiny little embryo, the little alien embryo, and they implant it not into a person, they implant it into the lung that they've removed, the damaged lung that they've removed from Hermit. And so then that's where the episode ends, where we see that little embryo go into the lung as Wherever I May Roam by Metallica, of course, another headbanging classic from the 90s, gets played on the soundtrack.
Yeah, so we've had Sabbath, we've had Tool, and now Metallica.
Now
So,
Metallica, yeah.
yeah, that's a fun little tidbit that we can look forward to at the end, at the credits of each subsequent episode. But every time these eggs in all these movies, they're moving, they kind of look like they're opening, and humans just stick their heads right over the top of it
Yeah.
to see. I mean, come on, surely that's not your first movement. So the little tadpole is in the face hugger,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah, okay, so that's cool. And now it's in Hermit's removed lung, and we think it's gonna
It should grow.
morph.
It's funny because I never
Yeah,
deconstructed it to that extent, but you assume this face hugger, right, puts the tube down your throat, and the embryo gets deposited in your lungs, right? And then I guess it's because it's close to your heart. There's no heart in the lung there, but anyway, then it grows inside of you, like taking your oxygen and your blood supply, I would assume, until it gets to a certain size, and then it pops right out.
yeah, I do enjoy them deconstructing that because in all these movies, it seems like they grow so fast
Yeah.
and so large so quickly. So, yeah, I'm interested in what's going to happen with this lung. It's so cool. And poor old Hermit, he's not dead. Hermit will come back. I don't know whether they're going to put the lung back inside him.
Yeah.
Surely not.
They
But
probably don't. I mean, you don't, you only need one lung, but
that's right.
he's not going to run any marathons though. They probably wouldn't put it back unless, I mean, why they would, it would burst out of his chest. If they can replicate that without putting it in him, I think they should be all right.
Poor old Hermit. I did like earlier in the episode when he's like, I'm a soldier,
Yes,
trying to
yeah.
push Wendy out of the way when she's like,
I'm
no,
here to
no, I got
protect
this.
you. She's like a superhuman robot. I'm like, no, I don't know if that's going to work.
Yeah, interesting. And what do you think? We haven't talked about the Ice Age references and the baseball
Everybody's been talking
references.
about
So
this. Yes, yeah.
yeah, so why are they onto this sport that obviously hundreds of years ago, and this what is it, a DreamWorks show? It's not even a
Hmm.
Disney show, is it?
Yeah,
That was on, yeah, hundreds of years ago in
right.
this lifetime.
Yeah, I guess they don't make good animated movies anymore in the future. They're watching the Disney Peter Pan, right? Isn't that the Disney Peter Pan they're watching? So
Yes,
it's
I
like,
think so.
yeah, so that's from the 1930s, right? So it's like, 200 years earlier, more than 200 years earlier. So yeah, I guess they just stopped making good animated movies. Or maybe, who knows? Maybe, like all the AI generated movies that are coming in the future are so bad that over time that everyone's just like, it's like nothing but, people don't even know how to make good movies anymore. So everybody has to like bust out the Ice Age. The Ice Age is going to look like that's how bad it is, by the way, in the future, Darren. That Ice Age is going to look like a masterpiece.
That's so funny. Perhaps, yeah, what happens comes true in this Earth. Maybe the kind of change was predicted accurately with Ice Age. I don't know.
Maybe it was. They'll be like, that's why it resonated. That's a good point.
Yeah, that's it.
They're like, wow, that was exactly how it played out. I was rescued by a saber-toothed tiger too. Any predictions on what the next 80s/90s metal needle drop is going to be at the end of next week's episode?
Ooh, so we were doing this. What was that series we were doing that
Oh, it
with?
was for Paradise.
For Paradise, we kept trying to predict, and I think we got close on a few occasions. So we're talking 90s. So we couldn't go like Corn or Limp Bizkit, perhaps, or perhaps there would be bands that would stand
Yeah.
the test of time longer than them. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to think about that.
Is it going to be like girls, girls, girls?
Motley Crue.
Molly Crew?
Okay.
No, I don't think there'll be Molly Crew in there. I think there could be a couple of Crew songs that would be all right, but I don't know if that's going to fit in with. I mean, they went to Tool right away. Tool is 90s, right? 90s, or is that even 2000s? Maybe.
Well, it's early 90s, and I think their last record was 5 years ago. So yeah, that's stood the test of time. That Paradise Show was all that hair metal, wasn't it, from the 80s?
Well, they also had like Phil Collins and we built this city. Remember we built this city? Oh, you know what you're thinking about the hair metal, by the way. You should mention this as well. Tomorrow, Peacemaker comes back, and
Oh,
I might review that as well next week. So I might have a separate. I might just put that in that catch-all episode later to discuss it. But the reason I bring that up is they had a lot of deep cut 80s hair metal in that. They had like Kicks and bands like that. Like they did not go for the obvious tunes. So I'm very curious to see if they keep that going with this new season of the show, which is getting really good reviews, by the way. Excellent reviews so far.
yeah, I really enjoyed the first season. I did see that pop up on my, is that HBO?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I saw it pop up last night. I was like, oh, season two, but no, not yet.
Yep. Just a day away, though. You were so close. So close. So another
Wicked.
thing to watch, another thing we'll be watching here. Anything else, Darren, you want to bring up on this episode?
I don't think so. I think we've covered it pretty well. I think yeah, it's really interesting. Some really interesting scenes. Not only the action and the kind of metamorphosizing of the xenomorph. Really cool show.
And a lot of places the story can go. Maybe too many, but I do feel confident that they're going to tie these things together. The whole question of who is going to claim parentage to these kids, and of course, what is going to happen with Kirsch in his like kind of trying to find his place in this world. Really fascinated by that. Murrow, what's his broader plan to reclaim these creatures? He obviously wants to get to Neverland so he can get them out. What is going on with Wendy being able to communicate? Why is she the only one that can hear this communication with the alien creatures? What is going on with Nibs and her crisis of body? Yeah, there's a lot of interesting details and all to come in the next 5 weeks or so.
Yeah, I don't want to get too attached to these Lost Boys
Yeah,
because I
they're all going
think
to start
we're going
getting
to
killed
lose a
off one
few.
of these. For sure, for sure. All right, Darren, thank you again for the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Victor.
Talk to you soon.